I'm Larry Fedoruk, and welcome to another episode of my podcast. I Was 8 is a weekly series, stories of that magnificent year growing up on the great Canadian prairie. Timelines do bend a little. Some of the names have been changed, but these stories mostly happened as told. I was 8.
Chapter 7, The Marble Game.
When I was 8, I was still an only child, and since both my parents worked, I would have been what many people called a latchkey kid. Except that in the time and town I grew up in, no one locked their doors. I don't remember the doors actually having locks, for that matter. Oh, I'm sure they did, but no one ever used them. No one ever had to search about for their house keys. Car keys, yes, but house keys? What's that? I remember being home alone a lot after school. Let's see, school got out at 3:30, general roughhousing, then meandering to get home. You had to get in your meandering. Get home around 4-ish. Mom would usually be home around 6, so those 2 hours, a big block of time for a kid, were glorious. Not only did I have the world to myself, but I ruled it. I ruled this house now. This was my kingdom.
Your Majesty.
Now I ruled, but I ruled partly under the pre-established laws of the domain. General kids' rules, like don't play with matches, don't burn the house down. No problem. Fire and matches weren't really my thing anyway. There were a few other rules. After school, I could go to a friend's house, but since no one but me was home at my house, I couldn't have friends over without special permission or until my mom got home. I could have a snack, but it had to be something healthy. Yeah, I broke that rule heartily and often. It was recommended that I use that time after school to do any homework assignments, but doing homework right after school? Well, come on, too soon. I was assigned certain chores in order to maintain my status as a member of the family and continue to receive my allowance, but most of those I just put off to the weekend. I could watch TV, but not too much. God knows what that meant. How in the world is there such a thing as too much TV? It's impossible. I was that kid that would rather sit in front of the TV even on beautiful summer days. Mom would have to chase me out of the house just to go out and play. Oh, I played, but I always wondered how the idea of throwing a ball back and forth in the yard with my idiot friend Philip could compare to the entire world being piped into my living room. It's not even a competition. The choice is clearly TV.
Presenting the Cavalcade of Stars. Here's a show you are bound to enjoy. You take to it just like a kid to a
I would make sure the TV was off by the time Mom got home, and if asked about my TV time, I would lie. Mom took to holding her hand to the side of the old set to see if it was warm. I guess the degree of heat was an indicator of how long the TV was on, the old tubes and stuff. So I knew I had to shut it down at least 30 minutes prior to Mom's ETA. Damn, the old tube technology was screwing me. I got this idea to place a cold pot of water on top of the TV to cool it down, but it didn't really do anything. Plus, that meant then I had to empty, dry, and replace the pot in the cupboard before Mom got home, and that was all too clumsy. I tried wiping the side of the TV repeatedly with a cold cloth, but again, labor-intensive, not very effective. When I was 8, it was also a time when parents didn't necessarily stock a lot of healthy after-school snacks for the kids. I wasn't even sure what the healthy snack meant. Well, I knew it meant no candy. And don't drink your dad's Pepsi. Those Pepsis are for Dad and his friends when they come over with whiskey. The Pepsi is for the whiskey, not for Larry. I drank them anyway. The Pepsis were kept on the floor in the pantry, so my dad would just open the door and glance at the bottles. If all the caps were on, everything was in order. So I devised a plan that after I drank a Pepsi, I replaced the cap on the bottle carefully so that at a glance from up high, it looked untouched. So instead of getting in trouble once a day for drinking one of my dad's banned Pepsis, I would just get in trouble once a week when Dad would pull 6 completely empty, carefully recapped bottles of Pepsi out of the carton. I weighed the pros and cons of trouble once a week versus trouble every day. Plus, it was my dad's friends and whiskey. He was already in trouble with Mom over that, so how much trouble could I get into? I think I made the right decision. Dad and his friends ended up having to drink straight whiskey. Oh yeah, times were tough. And since we didn't keep candy snacks in the house, I took to eating my mom's baking products. Chocolate chips, semi-sweet coconut, almonds, walnuts, whatever was in there. That backfired too. Sorry, Larry, no cookies this weekend. Someone ate all of the ingredients. Huh. But hey, Alone After School was not just about TV and snacks. I invented some pretty cool games. One was based on this rescue TV drama that was on back in the day. I would throw my old teddy bear behind the couch or the chairs or under a bed or high up on a cupboard. Then I would rescue the poor trapped child by mountain climbing, crawling through the dangerous narrow cave, or carefully being lowered from a helicopter until I could reach the stranded toddler. I was good at my job on the rescue team. Probably the best they ever had. I know the people loved me. Sometimes, after a particularly harrowing rescue, they would reward me with, say, a Pepsi. The game that I most remember completely of my own invention was the marble game. I may have had a better name for it at the time, but that is lost to history. I had a pretty good marble collection. Kids played marbles at school, and I was decent at it. Won a few, I also had a Chinese checkers set, and I included all of those marbles in my collection and in my marble game. The school marble game, by the way, was not my marble game. So here's how you play my marble game. In our house on the ground floor, we had the kitchen, and then we had 2 large rooms. The first room was the de facto family room, and the other room, the official living room, mostly for company. Not my dad's friends. They drank whiskey in the garage, with Pepsi when available. The rooms were divided by a partial wall archway. Each room had carpeting, but the carpeting stopped at the base of the wall that formed the archway. That meant that along the floor between the 2 pieces of carpet was a strip of hardwood, almost as long as the 2 rooms and say about 6 to 8 inches wide. The carpet edges had become a trip hazard, so Dad taped them down right on top with some masking tape or some carpeting tape of some sort. Sorry if this is complicated. I was 8. The idea of the marble game was to sit at one end of the family room, roll a marble down the carpet so that it would end up in the area of the hardwood. If you didn't roll it hard enough, it would stop short. If you rolled it too hard, it would roll right over the taped bump through to the living room. Each marble on the hardwood was 1 point, and the team with the most points won the game. In the case of a tie, there was a playoff. Okay, so what teams? I'm only one kid home alone. Well, I divided up my marbles into teams, red, blue, green, etc. If a marble was multicolored but mostly red, it could be on the red team. All marbles that didn't have a predominant color formed the multicolored team. Each team had 10 members. I decided not to divide teams by size, so the blue team, for example, would have marbles of every size. This would require a different rolling technique, different weight. I also had a team of steelies. Steelies were what we called steel marbles. And of course, they weren't really steel marbles at all. They were just various sizes of ball bearings that kids would use as marbles. At the school game, if you thought a kid was going to shoot your marble out of the circle, the pot, and win it, you could call substitution and replace your glass marble with a steely. Then you declared no more substitutions, so that he couldn't replace his with a steely. Well, a glass marble can't shoot out a steely. I mean, come on. The strategy usually worked. Eventually, at school, we had to make up a whole set of rules around steelies. At home, however, steelies were their own team in my marble game. So again, to recap, roll the marble at a speed to ensure it ends up on the hardwood. But say if a green marble could roll hard enough, he might knock some of the other blue marbles out into the living room, then again, maybe some of his own. So you had to be careful if your roll was a takeout strategy. By the way, later in life, I understood some people nuanced this game and put it on ice and called it curling. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure I invented that whole thing with my marble game. I would play the marble game for hours. It became the after-school activity. Couldn't wait to get home and start an entire new marble game tournament. Which team would be hot today? The Yellows. They hadn't won in a long time. Or, again, would it be the Reds, who seemed to be a bit of a dynasty? Steelies were formidable because of their brute strength and weight, but often they just tried to knock out others. But alas, also rolled through to the living room just too many times, so they may have to change up their game plan. If you break this down, I was technically each player on each team. I mean, I knew that, but I was also the gaming official, league commissioner, play-by-play announcer, and of course, king and god.
Your Holiness.
If I wanted the green team to win 5 in a row, they did, and so on. Mostly I tried to be fair, but sometimes, you just have to have a dynasty to maintain interest in the league. I kept score. Sheets and sheets of crayoned and penciled stats. These sheets were kept hidden in my room, and the marble game was completely private. I never talked of it with anyone or played the game when my parents were at home. Even then, I had a feeling that it was a complete and mindless waste of time. It did nothing but feed some desperate childhood need to be the best at something. I knew if I played it when Mom was at home, eventually she would tell me to go read a book or do some chores, play outside, or the ever-popular yet generic, do something useful with your time. I mean, as wastes of time go, she would rank the marble game below TV. I sense that. Eventually, there was one other person I told about the marble game. My idiot friend Philip. I asked Mom for special permission to have Philip over after school, on the premise that we were just going to play in the backyard. Of course, immediately, I brought Philip into the house and explained the marble game. Of 8 teams, he could have half, and we'd compete. He picked the red team. Okay, you can't have the red team, that's mine. But any others? He picked the steelies. I had to explain, you can't have the steelies either. Anyway, finally the game began. He took all of the marbles in his 2 hands and rolled them all at once. Stop! That's not how it's played. Believe me, I've tried that technique before. He said one at a time would take too long and it was boring. I tried to explain that the pace and length of the game was actually its appeal. Well, he went to the fridge to see if there was any snacks. This guy was getting on my nerves. To think I was going to offer him a Pepsi. Eventually, he came back and he tried to suggest improvements to my marble game. Like, what if I set up blocks or dominoes along the course and we had to knock them over? No. What if instead of marbles, we also used car toys or something with wheels? No, that's not the marble game. Oh, my God. Why couldn't this cretin understand the marble game? Well, he got bored and he went home. And I rarely spoke to him after that. At my next birthday party, my mom forced me to invite him. I finally agreed under duress. We never spoke of the marble game then. In fact, I've never actually spoken of the marble game to anyone else until now. As an adult, remembering the marble game, I feel like some days I'd actually like to play. It would get my mind off things. You know how it is. Of course, I'd need 2 rooms with a strip of hardwood in between the carpeting. I just can't think of how to recreate the game arena. At one time, I even thought of manufacturing this whole gaming surface that would fold out and come with marbles and score sheets, and I would try and sell the idea to like Hasbro or somebody like that. Also, there could easily be an app version of it. And then I always imagine that I go through all this trouble and finally get a meeting with the big VP at the toy company, and I show up and it's Philip.
I Was 8 is a weekly series written, produced, and voiced by Larry Fedoruk. A new episode every Thursday. Share your stories with Larry, or if you like, share Larry's stories with a friend. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Larry Fedoruk, that's Fedoruk, can be reached at larryfedoruk37@gmail.com.